What's up, guys? This is Coach Michael, and this is my skills breakdown newsletter. The topic of today's newsletter is going to be how to split step. I got a series of clips here demonstrating the skill, one game sample and one controlled sample. So we're going to jump right in here and watch the game sample first. All right, so if you're not familiar with the split step, a split step is a footwork pattern that we use when we catch on the perimeter, and we're essentially not establishing a pivot foot. It's very similar to a jump stop, except our feet are staggered in a sprinter-like stance. Okay, so I'm going to play this again in slow motion here. I'm just going to control the speed with my mouse. All right, so there's the catch, feet are split, and there's the rip. Another term that I use for this is called immediate rip. As you can see, she just catches and immediately rips the ball, so there's the reason for the terminology. I try and keep terms as literal as possible so players remember them much easier. But a couple teaching points. So I'm going to use a game sample here to just kind of show the context of when we use it, some of the skills and like technical aspects, and then I'll just kind of show the sample, the controlled sample, so that you guys get a much closer representation, a little closer visual of the skill. All right, so one of the first things that when I'm teaching this skill that I really try to get players to understand is the timing and rhythm with the catch. And the phrase that I use that many coaches use that I've been around is ball in air, feet in air. Okay, so that means as the ball's in the air, when it's about 3/4 of the way, you can see the player here who's catching, her feet are off the ground. Okay, the player I'm using for this sample is one of my clients. I've been training her for about 4 years now. So she's pretty well versed with this footwork and the context of the read. Just so you guys as the viewers understand why I chose this player. But anyway, back to the skill stuff here. Balls in air, feet in air. Now, when she catches, her feet set at the same time on the floor. All right, this allows us to have flexibility with which foot we use as a pivot. Okay, and so one of the rules I tell my players, if you're going to rip left, we want a sprinter stance to the left. If you're going to rip right, sprinter stance to the right. And what that essentially means is a sprinter step is when we have a back foot available to push off, just like a sprinter would in a race. Okay, so if we're going left, we want left foot forward, right foot back. Inversely, if we're going to drive right, right foot would be forward, left foot would be back. Okay, now the only difference, the only little wrinkle I would say is to be sure that you hit is it's sprinter-like, and that's a very important distinction because we want to make sure that our feet are not skinny like a sprinter would be. We want to be wide and we want to be low. In basketball, we move left, right, forward, and back, so we need balance. Okay, so as you catch here, you can see my client, she has her feet very wide. Her hips are low, all right, and she has balance. In the event that this player at the last second decided to close out to the baseline side, she would be able to counter out of that with an open step, which I'm not going to get into in this video, and continue her immediate rip and have no pause. Okay, now moving on. So the next thing now, so we caught with both feet on the floor, we established no pivot. Now defender closes out high and tight to her right hand, so she rips baseline using cross step footwork, and this will be the primary footwork that you use out of a split catch or split step. Okay, and you can see it allows her to get the ball across her body, have ball protection, and get by that defender very quickly. So I'm going to play that live speed one more time. Catch, rip, immediately, and go. So we took advantage. Now for the decision aspect here. Okay, so context-wise, this player is trained to make decisions within 0 seconds, so essentially right away on a catch, whether she's going to shoot, pass, or drive. Okay, so for this particular read, she decided to drive because her defender closed out aggressively, and on the catch she had 2 feet outside of the paint. Okay, so just to reiterate, if she caught the ball and her defender had 1 foot or both feet inside the paint area, okay, and there's the paint, then she would obviously shoot it. She has plenty of space to shoot. She can use whatever footwork she wants, okay? And that's all. I'm going to take a little side note there. We use split step footwork in specific situations, and those are aggressive, over pursuing closeout defenders, okay? So let's make sure that we understand there's a distinction there. This is not universal footwork that you want to teach for every single catch, all right? So when we teach this, we need to make sure that our players understand that if their defender, while closing out and on the catch, has if they have both feet outside of the paint on the catch, more often than not, that means they're aggressive, and we need to immediately rip the ball and take advantage of that advantage of them being overly aggressive, okay? And so that's how my client here is trained. She makes that read on the catch. Her defender's aggressive. She takes advantage of the space that's available to her, and she gets the floater over the big, okay? And I'm not going to get into reads on help side rotation, whether or not she should have floated the ball or pulled up. I'll save that for another video. So let's just focus on the initial read of the catch and rip. All right, going to the controlled samples here so you guys can see a little better with the footwork and some close-up angles. I'm just going to let this play through first, and then I'll go through a little more slowly, okay? So going to our right, or her right in this video, she splits her feet into a sprinter-like stance going right, which means right foot's forward, left foot's back. She's got her feet 2 steps, at least at minimum, outside the width of her shoulders. She's low, she's athletic, okay? So there's a catch, ball was in air, feet were in air, all right? And then our first step, as I mentioned earlier, is always gonna be a cross step when we're just gonna go. When we get into our counters, we can get into open steps and load steps and things like that. But again, I'm not gonna cover that here. A little closer up here for you guys. Both feet down, pushes off the back foot with a sprinter-like step. Now, when we slow motion things at times, you know, you could sit here and argue, well, her back foot's down first and the front foot is still up a little. In slow motion, technically, yes, you are correct, okay? When we play this in live speed, it's essentially a 2-foot landing, all right? We're not gonna be exactly perfect in games. There's gonna be slight error, okay? As long as we're near and around that 2-foot landing, we'll be just fine. All right, and as long as we get that timing down with the catch, we should be good. Okay, going the other way, going to our left, so we sprinter step to the left, which means we now have left foot forward, right foot becomes our sprinter step, cross step across the body, ball goes down with the dribble, with the step. Okay, and there's our wide base. Now, if you're coming back to our game sample here, you know, and one thing I want to make clear, there's a lot of gray area in basketball. You know, two words that I don't like to use in my vocabulary as a coach is don't and never, because there's just a million and one ways to do things. This is just one way that I teach, and it's a very specific read. So anyone out there who is an advocate for permanent pivot foot, shot faking, that's all good. I teach that stuff in other situations as well. The way I look at it, and this is just my opinion, I want my players and my clients to be as fast as possible when making decisions. So in this particular situation, if I have an aggressive defender who's already out of position and has put themselves in a position where they've opened up a side of the floor to drive, I want to expose and take advantage of that as fast as possible. So in this particular situation, if she took a moment to shot fake and then drive, what would happen hypothetically here is, and there's a million scenarios, but this is just one, and one that happens often. If she took a moment to set her feet shot fake, this defender now settles into her closeout. She reestablishes her balance. She can slide better to cut her off. Also behind her, her teammates are going to be settling into their help side rotations, into gaps, and the help side 2 passes away, etc. Okay, so by her taking immediate advantage of this defender's poor closeout, we now force scrambling once again, okay? Because we already came out of a scramble and transition here. Basically, they're in secondary offense. point guard hits a wing right away and we get a closeout right on the first pass. Awesome. Take advantage of it. Make them play closeout basketball. Make them rotate and make them play tougher defense. So that's my thought on it and why I teach it that way as opposed to shot faking. I used to be all about the shot fake. There are times for it, but in my personal opinion, I don't think in this situation you want to do that. You want to be as fast as possible. So coming back to these controlled samples, just so you guys get, and you can see here, she got much better timing on her landing. And it takes time. It's a skill that you got to work on day in and day out. So one of the ways that I like to train stuff like this, as you guys can see here, this is a drill that I use right away when teaching players how to split step and just work on timing. Just have them grab a partner, simply toss the ball to them, and just work on ball in air, feet in air, landing on 2 feet with balance and staggered feet in a sprinter-like stance, and then cross-stepping into a speed stop. Speed stops are just 1-2 stop footwork, as demonstrated here. All right, so hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of what the split step is, the context, and the decision-making behind it, the reasoning. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to give me a comment in this post. You can also email me at info@michaelmartinezbasketball.com or hit me up on a contact form on my website at michaelmartinezbasketball.com as well. And I'll talk to you guys soon.